Okay.
Okay.
Now I get the account owner. Okay. So you got it. All right.
So you got it?
Yeah, I got it. So you
Okay.
were gonna do. You said you were gonna do a questionnaire type thing this time.
Yeah, well, I can do that. So it
And
would
you want me to go to go from the time I met your mother on,
sure.
whichever you prefer.
No, that sounds good. That's what I was thinking. From the time you met her onward.
Well, I met your mother after I got out of the Air Force and I started graduate school in Milwaukee. And she was introduced to me by a friend of mine that I had been at St. Norbert with, and who was in Milwaukee teaching at Pius High School at the time. And that was in 1954. And I think we started dating. And one incident I can remember is we both were going to go home for the weekend. And did I do this already?
Oh, you didn't do that here. Mm-mm.
Okay, we were going to go home for the weekend, and I decided to take her to Peshtigo to her mother's, and then I was going to go to Menominee, which I did. And I dropped her off in Peshtigo and went to Menominee and called some of my friends in Menominee. They said, "Well, great, we knew you were coming home, and we got you a blind date." I said, "Okay, tell me who she is and where she lives." Well, I got in the car and drove right back to Peshtigo where I left your mother off, and went to the door, and she answered the door, and I says, "I'm your blind date."
Did you both laugh really hard at that point?
Yeah. So my passenger from Milwaukee became my blind date. But then after that, we continued dating. We went to various places. We watched basketball games together. Marquette had a good team again. She lived in an apartment on 12th Street, just one block north of Marquette at that time, because she was going to summer school at Marquette. So, and then in the fall, we continued to date, and then Hal Cusson, Al Cusson, and Joan Cusson met each other, and because Joan was a good friend of your mother's, and Hal was a good friend of mine, and we went to several Packer games together. And then at the end of that year, I remember we went back up to Menominee, where I was, for me to become best man at your aunt Mary Alice and Uncle Chuck's wedding in January.
Hmm.
Uh, then after that we continued to date, and through this, then in May we became engaged and set
How
a
did you
date.
propose? How did you
Pardon?
propose? How did you propose to her?
Good question.
Is it, remember, mom's side,
I think I took her out to dinner
you
in
took her out to dinner
Milwaukee.
and she said that you got her a dozen roses and at the end of the dozen was a engagement ring. Is that right?
Yes. And after the date, I gave her roses, and I had put her diamond ring on the end of one of the rose stems. So
Quick question. So were you long distance between Camel Sport and Milwaukee during your dating time? And how far was that?
yeah, well, that's Camel Sport's only about 35 miles away.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So, and then after we became engaged that spring, we set the date for the wedding, which was the 27th of August of that year, and proceeded to get married in the Peshtigo Fire Museum,
Before it was the
which is at that time was St. Mary's Catholic Church.
How
was
big
big.
was the wedding, Dad? How big was the wedding?
I think it was about 150.
Mhm.
We got married in that church, and we had the reception in Menominee at the Lloyd Union Hall.
Hmm.
And we didn't have we had a dinner reception, but we did not have a dance because your grandmother Newberry didn't want to have a dance, so we didn't have that.
That wasn't a good Catholic thing to do after a wedding, huh?
Well, my farmer relatives were extremely disappointed.
Yeah, I bet. The
There
barn
wasn't a
dance. Where's the
dance.
barn dance?
Who,
Yeah.
who all attended the wedding?
Who attended the wedding? Well, your Aunt Mary Alice came from Lubbock, Texas, where your Uncle Chuck was in the Air Force, and she was pregnant with Kathy, and he didn't come along because of his Air Force duties. She had Kathy the January after the wedding. And let's see, Mom Lil and my dad and my Linsmeyer relatives from the farm area, and of course, your mother's relatives from Peshtigo, and my high school friends, and your mother's high school friends, and that's pretty much it. And
That's
after the reception, we got in the car and started to drive away, and all of a sudden there's all this rattling, and I found out that they had taken my car away and put stones at the hubs and put the hubcaps back on. So then we went away, it would make a lot of noise. In those days, it was much because we were going to travel to Mackinac Island for a honeymoon. They didn't do the typical thing to the car, which was to tie a long row of cans together and then attach those to the car. So,
you got off easy, huh?
Sounds
well,
pretty creative.
Yeah.
so it was a nice reception. We had a good time, and then
So, so what was it about mom what did you share some values with her, or how did you decide mom was the one?
well, she was a pretty woman,
Mhm.
so she had that as a big value. And of course, she was an educator, and I was into education. And being from Menominee and Peshtigo was another thing that we shared.
Mhm.
And we had the same views and the same religion and so forth. So,
Yeah. Except for you had that one little difference that at first Grandma Newberry didn't like. What was that? There was a
well, when I dropped your mother off before that blind date, after I picked up your mother again, she says, "Well, my mother was pretty put out." And I said, "Why was that?" She says, "Because you're German, and you're German and your dad owns a bar. So I had 2 strikes against me, but I guess I never developed the 3rd strike, so she never.
You won him over.
Yeah. I'm sure that was a quick win over for a while for them though.
Yeah, so that was our honeymoon, to go up to Mackinac Island, really far. It was a destination honeymoon. And then after we completed the honeymoon, we went back to Milwaukee, where your mother had gotten a job at St. Augustine School in Bayview, teaching 3rd grade. And then we rented an apartment 3 blocks from there. And it was a big event in one respect, that I had a lot of relatives on my Albert side of the family that lived about 4 blocks from us. And they were all excited because my bride was going to be a teacher in their grade school.
Wow. Wow. That's quite a coincidence, huh?
Yeah. So, and then that was in September, and by October, I think it was, your mother was pregnant, and I was working at Allstate Insurance at that time. And she was supposed to have Tom in August. So when it came down for my annual training for the Air National Guard, which I had joined, and the training was in Camp Douglas at Volk Field, we decided that she would join me for the weekend, and we would meet up with Vic and Elaine Swanson from Menominee. He was in the Army National Guard, and he was training in Sparta, which is 30 miles away. So on the middle weekend, we got together and went to the Dells and went on the boat trip and everything. And then Sunday we came back to the motel, got in the motel, and your mother said, I must have eaten something that's not agreeing with me. And then it continued getting worse. And I says, sounds to me like more than indigestion. So I looked out the front door of the motel to see if I could see any hospitals. Well, I went to the motel office and found out where the hospital was and took her over there. It was about 7:00 in the evening. I was supposed to be officer of the day and work all night, but I went over there and found out that she was in labor. So one of my friends over there took over my duties at the base, and I stayed there. And I think Tom was born like 10 or 11 o'clock the next morning. So it was an extremely long period of time of labor. And then after he was born, he had an infection in his shoulder. And of course, that was in June, so he was 6 months early, 6 weeks early.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So we stayed there. Your mother stayed there. Then it was the end of my training, and he was going to have to stay another 2 weeks, and your mother had to get back, and I had to get back. We didn't have any choice, and so we left Tom there for about 10 days, and then they called us and said we could pick him up. We went to the weekend, and he was still had to stay, but he was released after 10 days and came back to Milwaukee and went into St. Joe's Hospital for some more treatment. But then he came home. And just before he was born, we had moved to a flat behind Marquette University on 31st Street. It was a flat that had 3 bedrooms, a big dining room, a living room, and a decent sized kitchen. So it was a large flat as flats go. And it was a good thing because 10 months later, Dave was born.
Yep.
And then 18 months later, Bill was born, and we were still living there. But then in 1960, we bought a house on Roar Avenue right near Timmerman Field.
10426.
And
10426.
10426 West Roar Avenue. And we lived, that year also, Alice was born. And while we lived there for 5 years, Nancy was born and Patty was born. And then after 5 years, we were 6 kids and 2 adults in a 3-bedroom house with 1 bath. To
And
say
what was
the
the
least,
footage?
it was a little bit crowded.
What was the square footage, Dad?
1,100.
For
Mhm.
8
So,
people?
pardon?
8 people, right? 8 people?
Right. But I got to use the bathroom first in the morning because I had to go to work.
You didn't have to fight off the crowd, huh?
Then that was 1965, and we had to move into another house, so we were looking around for a house. At that time, Tom and Dave had started school at St. Agnes in Butler, and they were bused to the school, and we wanted to get a lot to build on where kids could walk to school, and we found a lot at Center Street and Mayfair Drive in Brookfield, about 6 blocks away from a new Catholic church that was also being built there. And so and in addition to that, Brookfield had busing for the public school kids, but it was determined because buses were a safety issue that they also had to bus the parochial school kids. So by the time we got it in the house in 65, they had started busing the kids, and the bus started right at the end of the driveway. So you didn't have to walk 6 blocks, and I didn't have to pay bus fare, so it worked out good.
Good deal, huh?
Good deal. So, and then
Why you chose Brookfield then is because of the distance to a new Catholic church? Yeah.
yeah, and there was a Catholic school there, and of course, about 75% of the whole neighborhood did the same thing. So it was filled with large Catholic families.
Mhm, mhm.
And then subsequently, Jim and Mark were born, but that pretty much brings us up to date.
So
With,
how much did you pay for the lot and house over at 2615?
well, the lot was $2,700, and the house was, I think, $2,300. So it was a 4-bedroom house with 2 baths. No, it was a 5-bedroom house with 2 baths. And so it was considerably less expensive than any houses these days.
The
What
lot
year
was actually more expensive than the house.
Pardon?
The lot was actually more expensive than the house.
No, the lot was $2,700.
Uh-huh.
The house was $23,000.
Oh, 23,000. Okay.
So
And what year did you put on the new addition?
in 1970, because we had started the schools, we needed more space in the basement for the office. So we added on to the house in 1970. We added on 1,500 square feet, which gave us a nice room for part of the office in the basement. In the other room, completed it. And your mother and I lucked out because we got a 1,500 square feet bedroom suite above the basement area.
Mhm. Got out of the middle of the riffraff where you were before that.
Well, we got a hideout in the back of the house.
Yeah, with that nice patio, sliding glass door and stuff, right? Peaceful
Right.
place, peaceful place, yeah. So what was life like through all those phases with all the kids and work and everything?
Hectic.
Yeah. What parts were hectic? What do you remember?
Well, I can remember a lot of kids being born,
Yeah.
and I had to take my turn getting up at night
Yeah.
to feed
Yeah.
them.
So you got to figure how many years with very little sleep, right?
Well, at least interrupted sleep.
Right, right, right. Yep. Yeah. Yep. And what were the things that you liked about it, or what was the joys of that, of having this big family?
Well, because there was a lot of kids in the house and people, and there was always something going on and something to do. And actually, having more kids took some of the burden off us because the older kids would take care of the younger kids, and the kids would play together. So we didn't have to arrange a lot of entertainment for you because you pretty much were able to take care of yourselves in that respect.
Yep, we had our buddies to play with. Um, did you go out very often with mom, or what was that like?
Well, we would go out maybe for dinner to somebody's house about once a week or once every other week. We didn't. Most of the stuff that went on was in the house, but we did have a group of friends, and of course, lots of activities at the church that we attended. So we
Yeah.
didn't go on any vacations really in the beginning, except up to see the grandparents.
So when did you start the vacations?
Well, I don't know what year exactly it was, but it was started with going to Florida. I decided that if we could get a tent trailer to take everybody down to Florida and stay in a camping park, that would be a cost that we could afford. So that's when that started. And of course, started out with our driving down there during the day and going down to Fort DeSoto, which is a park that we found that was really the best camping park in the country as far as I was concerned. Yeah. But driving down during the day the first 2 years was pandemonium. All the kids in the car. So the third year, I decided I got to fix this. So that's when I decided that instead of going during the daytime down there and going through Chicago when it was really busy and so forth, we would start out in the evening about 6 o'clock or so. So we would get down to Chicago when the rush hour was over. And then we drove all night. I drove all night and stopped. We stopped at Red Top Mountain State Park and outside of Atlanta, Georgia. And the mob was let out to roam the park, and I went to bed and slept all day. Then I got up the next night and we drove all night and got down to St. Petersburg early in the morning to get in line for a place to camp at Fort Desoto.
So you never reserved it. You had to just first come, first serve? Was
Well,
that it?
we at first we didn't know. That's why we had to get there about 4 o'clock in the morning. But then they put in a policy that you couldn't, out of town people could only couldn't start reserving them until 30 days ahead of time. That was so that the natives in the area would have a chance to reserve it before all the snowbirds came down.
Mhm.
So I found a relative down there who we contacted, and she put in the reservation as a local citizen for us, so we could reserve it prior to that 30-day period.
And you caught it every year, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And to me, that was the highlight of the year.
What did you love about that?
Oh, it's just relaxation. Really nice area with a big beach and place that it wasn't too wild, so that your kids could run pretty much freely without having to worry about your getting eaten by an alligator.
That was another time. Yeah, yeah. And I remember at Red Rock Canyon, you'd kind of half crank up the trailer so the bed came out a little bit to be able to rest. But I remember it was like there was nobody there, and we all went. What's that?
What did you say?
When we stopped on the way, it's not Red Rock.
Oh,
What
Red
was
Top Mountain. You
Red
said
Top Mountain? Red Top Mountain. But I
Okay.
remember being in that lake, just all of us by ourselves for the day. Just, swimming and the two of you in the camper. And I remember you had like a percolator coffee pot that you plugged into the lighter back when they had the cigarette lighters, right?
Yeah.
Stay awake.
Yeah, I
remember
think
going-
when we started that, Tom must have been 12 or 13.
So you didn't have another driver with you for a few years at least, right?
But I didn't have another driver until when? Until Tom and Dave became juniors and seniors in high school.
Yeah. Yep. So it was the two of you doing it. Mom was mainly on the coffee pot, right?
Yeah. Your mother had to hold the latest edition in her lap.
Oh, that's right. And what was, you should say what the little spot in between the two seat, the driver and the passenger seat was called back then. Do you remember?
No.
The 2-year-old hump.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. So you could stand on it and look outside.
No seat belts, no, yeah, no
And
car seats. Yeah,
no,
yeah. So there were a lot of good territorial wars going on in the back. when I was growing up.
well, that was the good thing about graduating to the pickup truck with a camper top.
Oh yeah, well, tell about that. How did you tell about that one?
Well, as you know, it was always noisy and there were always sibling bickering going on naturally. And when for the business, we got the pickup truck with the camper top. And then we start using that to go on our camping trips. Of course, we went on other camping trips in Florida too. Went to Albuquerque, we went to
Colorado.
Colorado, Washington, D.C., and so forth. And of course, it was always the opening of the season on Memorial Day when we go camping at a local park.
Right.
And
Yeah.
inevitably, one day a rain would occur.
Yeah. But you could bail at least if it was local, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember taking the Amtrak down to Albuquerque.
You what?
Remember taking the Amtrak to Albuquerque.
Oh, yes, that was before the camping.
It was, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it was the six of you, but it was before we went camping.
That was a fun trip.
Yep. Yep. And
Yeah.
the cabin had double panes in between. It's not like the shell on trucks now. You had a double pane of glass where you had a lot of peace and quiet in front, huh? In the truck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and what were some of the favorite stories, if you can remember any of them when we were younger, or just in general? What were some? What was it? What was it like back then?
Uh, I'm going to have to take some time to think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's so many of them. We all kind of know them. So
Yeah, you pretty much can tell them better than I can because you were participating in the story.
yeah,
I was I was only observing and picking up the pieces and
yeah.
handing out the punishments.
So what do you think some of the challenges were? What were the things, the challenges at that time?
Well, the challenges were with the family were having that many children and being able to finance the living.
Mhm.
So, as you well know, there was a lot of hand-me-downs and hand-me-downs across family lines. You got it from your Aunt Mary Alice and so forth. And to buy the food that was necessary, you had to watch the budget so that you were able to get food that was healthy and would go a long way. And your mother was an excellent cook, and she would find recipes that she wanted to that weren't too expensive. So you kids got a broad uh, uh, you had broad experience in eating different types of food.
Mm.
Uh, some
Especially
some you didn't seem to really cotton to, but
like the powdered milk or the diet for a healthy planet with a lot of soy flour and
well,
different.
we used to be able to go out to McDonald's once in a while. Of course, we cut everything in half.
And the milkshake would come in those little Dixie cups right from the bathroom, the ones you could pull out of the dispenser. It's kind of like a shot. It was like kind of a shot of malt.
And half a hamburger and half a plate of French. I mean, you guys really lived it up.
Yeah. That's why
I got-
we'd always want to go with you because then we could sneak some fries on the way home.
But all this area, you guys can tell stories that I don't even know about. So my experience, of course, was to make sure that we had enough food to eat and clothes to wear and type of.
How
But
about
it
the,
didn't seem, it wasn't an overwhelming burden at all. So
how about the post-dinner cleanup after dinner that you
you-
managed?
I'm trying to think of. Well, you guys are getting in areas that
You used to.
you could probably tell more funny stories and things than I can.
Yeah, we took a look at it like it was it was fun and not, we didn't really get a lot done. You would sweep the floor and you'd try to keep us in line, but we were taking, towels and doing crack the whip at each other with the towels, and we were doing everything but cleaning after dinner.
Yeah.
And we go to the bathroom a lot, which mom called work diarrhea.
Yeah. And of course, I could get into the teenage years, but I won't. That's up to each of you to tell what you want to tell, because your grandchildren might look at this one day.
Well, what were some of well, there's a couple of questions I have. One is, mom told me how, you mentioned budget. How did you talk about budget? Mom told me once of how you at first make sure you had enough money for the
Well,
more.
when I would get a paycheck, I'd cash it into currency. And then what we got is church envelopes. We took one of the pack of church envelopes and we would put a budget item on each envelope and then take the money and divide it up into those envelopes. And that's how we would spend our money until the next paycheck. Do the same thing. Then if we had surpluses in some of them, we could go out and do things. Extras.
Were there some pretty lean years in there, Dad?
Nothing that was uncomfortable.
Mhm.
I never said I don't know where I'm going to get the next dollar from or anything like that. We always had enough, but your mother was a good manager and we both were somewhat frugal. Again, Texas. What?
I remember mom clipping coupons a lot when she would
Yes.
go grocery shopping.
Yeah. Yeah.
We used to have those stamp ones too, the green S&H or something like that you'd have to look at.
It used to be known as green stamps.
Green stamps, right? Exactly. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you put them in a book. When you got a book full, you took her to the store and got the value and then spent it on whatever, the food.
Right. Right. Yeah. But through those years, married and with kids, what were some of the lessons, or what were some of the things that you would say to someone who's going through raising a family and things like that? What's important, or what would you say?
Well, it depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about providing for them, you're just going to have to make up your mind that you only have so much money and you have to budget that money first so that your family had food, shelter, and clothing and a place to live, and try to make recreation opportunities available in all kinds of different ways.
I still remember the family gifts like the toboggan.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Then also, of course, then you get into the disciplining area too, that when you have that many children, you can't let them run wild. You have to have rules that have to be enforced. But
Yep. And what's the balance with the rules and everything else and enforcement? What would you say about that?
well, to me, I never believed in physical punishment
Mhm.
because I think physical punishment creates resentment in children rather than a spirit of I won't do it again because I don't want to sit in a corner or be grounded and that type of thing. But so I felt that physical punishment was not an alternative. That and the other punishment is equally effective because especially kids don't like to be isolated. So the isolation protocol all the way through worked pretty well.
Well, you know what, Dad, there was
Not
a,
perfect, not perfect by a long shot, but
yeah, who could be with 8 kids, right? But I remember a brilliant intervention on your part, which was, we'd be in bed at night. We'd all be chatting. And Mom would spank us sometimes when we wouldn't stop. But you'd come in and say, okay, Nancy, you face that wall. Patty, you face that wall. Alice, you face that wall. And it stopped the talking because we couldn't see each other. So you had to be creative.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I, so
And
you, as I say, you people can tell more stories because you lived it.
and what's the important, so what are values, not just family, but also marriage? What's important, or what things guided you in all of that time?
Well, you have to love one another, and you have to make up your mind that you're it's too big a job for any one person. So you have to cooperate with each other and help each other, and be willing to do all types of things to make the family go.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. I did an amazing job of that. Do you want to talk a bit about marriage with Carmela?
Uh, I don't think that, not really,
Mhm.
because that's kind of an offshoot from the main area.
Yeah. Yeah.
Carmela was a loving person and wonderful person to be with. But what we did while we were married in Las Vegas and so forth really didn't involve you kids very much.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. We had all pretty much grown up by that point. Yeah.
You were
And
all
what were there like holiday traditions from your family that you did that you integrated in our holiday traditions, or how did holidays work?
well. Holidays, Christmas was when I was young. We had a Christmas tree that was trimmed, and we always celebrated Christmas at home as a family, which was continued. Probably my family was more elaborate in their celebration than your mother's family. So, which she welcomed. She didn't have any problem with having a more elaborate celebration.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
And other holidays were always celebrated at my family home, and we continued again more elaborately than your mother was used to, but she was happy to go along with it. So
Yep. Yep. Those are
and
always.
just generally speaking, you kids were raised differently, a lot differently than your mother was raised. You were raised more akin to the way I was raised.
Which was what?
Well, which was they were strict with me and everything, but I was allowed to uh, join things, go places as a teenager. Completely, your mother was not allowed to do any of that stuff.
Mhm.
So, and so, in respect to she tended to be more strict from her background than I did.
Mhm.
I don't know how it appeared to you, but
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it was more strict and it was a lot probably more lenient than what she grew up with, right?
oh yes, yeah. I mean, in high school, she never went out with any of her friends in high school. They go to a movie. It was always with their mother and dad and
Oh wow.
that type of thing. So,
Mhm. Yeah, we had a lot more freedom. Yeah. Mhm.
and I did too when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
I was, unbeknownst to my mother, I was
Oops. You froze, Dad. You got us on the edge of our seat.
Yes. Hopefully he'll come back in a minute or so.
Yeah. Wonder if I should text him.
I think I'll stop the recording just for now. I'll pause it.